Hi, and welcome to this latest conversation video. Today, I've got the privilege of being joined by James Pereira KC. I nearly said QC then, old habits die hard. James is a leading planning and environmental law barrister, but also a certified professional coach who coaches lawyers and other professionals and brings a really important insight. So, James, thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure to be here.
Just tell us a bit about you and what you do.
I mean, you got it in a nutshell. I'm full-time at the bar, planning and environmental law, Francis Taylor Building. Been practicing since about 1996, 97. Really enjoying it, and love the advocacy and the kind of the people management and all of that kind of stuff, the leadership. But I also work as a coach, as you said, mostly, but not entirely, but mostly lawyers, barristers. I do a lot of training workshops with the Inn and in chambers. And I'm also trained in a certain form of family therapy, and I run probably 4 or 5 kind of more therapeutic day-long workshops in chambers during the course of a year. I mean, my chambers is great, and they support me in all this stuff, which is lovely.
No, that's fantastic to have that environment where you can use that platform in chambers to help colleagues. Tell us about that journey, because somebody might think top QC who's also a coach. How did we get there? Yeah, tell us about your journey.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the headline is I got to a point where I needed help, got the help I needed, was so overwhelmingly impressed by it that I trained in it myself, and I thought, Christ, if it can help me and pull me up literally from the bottom of a dark pit, then the chances are it can help other people too. And that's how I got into it. So I from the get-go really was a really ambitious, I suppose I still am ambitious, was a really ambitious member of the junior bar, won lots of awards and stuff pretty early on, James and Partners, Barrister of the Year a couple of times, all that stuff. And I absolutely loved it. And I used to say to people, I love it so much that when I get home, even if I've had a really long day or a long trial, whatever, I don't feel like I've done any work. I feel like I've been enjoying myself, which was true, And then I got to a phase in my life where I was encountering some kind of challenges with my marriage, had 3 young kids, and then the kind of work and life started to really bash up against each other. And then I got to a point where I thought, well, I've got to try and change things. Couldn't really figure out how to change things. You try doing certain things and you just get stuck in a loop again, and couldn't really see options, or didn't have the strength to take options. And in the end, my marriage broke down. I kind of left home. I got absolutely overwhelmingly exhausted with the continuing in busy practice. This was the year I took Silk, 2014, continuing in busy practice, then all the trauma of relationship breakdown and so on. And I basically burnt out end of 2014 and hit rock bottom. And it was like all the kind of wires inside me had kind of fused, and I say it that way because that's how it felt, although I kept practicing throughout it. I think with hindsight, I did reduce some of my work, but basically kept practicing. Didn't really suffer any noticeable drop in performance, but I did know that internally I didn't feel as well resourced and as buoyant as I had. And I know certainly one summer, I can't remember exactly the year, I had a closing to write. Fortunately, I had a really good junior on the case. I had a closing to write, and I just couldn't. I would sit down, and it was like wading through treacle. I couldn't actually do it, and I kind of closed my study door and didn't do anything for about 4 or 5 weeks. And during that process, I went to get help. I went to get some therapy and some coaching, and it just completely. I remember leaving sessions with the strange sensation of crying and laughing at the same time. The laughter is kind of a defense mechanism and also a kind of sense of relief, and the crying very much a sense of relief. And just having my mind and my body blown by the capacity of someone else to raise my awareness about things that were affecting me that I had absolutely in a massive blind spot, and through that process got myself back on my feet. Decided I got to a point where I thought I've either got to kind of give up because I can't carry on, or I need to think of ways of doing things differently, and that was really the crossroads for me. So that journey was a way of doing things differently, by which I don't mean that it looks different necessarily from the outside, although some things I do, particularly in teamwork, probably a bit different to most other people. What I really mean is my internal relationship to my work had to change. And that's the process I went through, got myself back on my feet. I mean, that started 10 years ago, and it's been a gradual process since. And I'm now fully engaged, absolutely loving it, got my energy back. And for anyone listening who's hit a hard time or is wondering what to do, or thinks, can you recover from burnout? I would say absolutely yes, if you take your time and get the right support and are willing to be kind of kind and honest with yourself, and you need support of those around you and so on. And so that's kind of it. And along the way, the stuff that I received, I trained in, and now that's what I offer to other people. I mean, I'm very conscious that what works for me may not work for other people. So it really is about supporting others to find solutions that work for them. But obviously, I've got insights and experience that can help that, particularly when it comes to other members of the bar and other lawyers. So in a nutshell, that's it. Yeah.
No, James, thank you so much for your transparency and honesty about your journey, because I think it's so refreshing to hear it from those, and particularly those at the top of the profession as well. And that's really helpful, because a lot of us, are type A driven personalities, and those are challenges we all face. So how then do we sort of reorientate our professional lives so we practice from a place of strength?
Yeah, well, I just want to pick up before answering. I just want to pick up on something you said. There's a particular thing about the bar. I mean, it's probably in law firms too, which is that because we're sole practitioners, a lot of experience and knowledge just gets lost when people go, right? And so something I do a lot when I hang out with senior colleagues, which always used to frighten me, hanging out with senior colleagues, right? Now I really enjoy it, because I will ask them questions like, when did you realize that it was time to retire? Or how did you manage with this? And you've done all these cases. How did you do that? And actually, you find there's a huge amount of common ground in terms of struggle and pressure and everything else. But everyone has their own little gems and insights. So although you say, wonderful to be open and honest, actually, I found that if you ask people in the right environment and in the right way, of course, people tend to be open and honest. And there's a lot that we can all do professionally if we kind of build bridges between different seniorities and learn from each other's experience and so on. But park that to one side for a moment. So how can we practice from strength? So I have a little model that I use sometimes at the start of like training workshops, and it's a triangle, and it has a word at each corner of the triangle, and at one corner is technical skills, because we spend most of our training being trained in technical skills. What's the law? What does a good skeleton argument look like? How should the words sound when they come out of your mouth? That kind of thing. And we all need that, of course, and the bar and the ins and everything are excellent at teaching us that, and it's I think the bar's exemplary in its standards in that respect. But it seems to me that's not enough. So another point of the triangle is relationships. How do we build relationships, and what do relationships mean for us? And that means not only our person-to-person relationships or team relationships, and those are wide-reaching. We obviously have client relationships and team relationships, but if you stand up to cross-examine a witness, you're entering into relationship with the witness, and so your relationship dynamics will be triggered. For some people, if the witness is a senior-looking white man, that will have a different effect to if they're a young woman, or if the witness is aggressive, that may have a different effect to if the witness is placid and meek. And we all have to learn how to deal with those things, but that interaction will press certain buttons within us that then tie into our own relationship skills. So learning about relationships is really important, but also relationships with things. What's our relationship to a case? What's our relationship to the bar? What's our relationship to our status or image as a barrister? Because all of these things kind of mix up in how we present ourselves and the stresses we face. So relationships are important. And then the other part of the triangle is presence. And presence is really about our internal self and our internal dynamics and the state that we bring. And I guess it might be encapsulated by a simple question like, how am I going to show up today? You know, and it's so easy, particularly when we get busy, to just kind of default into we show up in the way that we happen to be that day, and it'll kind of be a general run of the mill, you know, this is how James Pereira is. Whereas actually different situations require different energy from us, different attitudes from us, different ways of presenting ourselves. And that requires us to be aware of our internal state, and also then to have the capacity to adjust, even if we've just had a big bust up with our partner, or the client's just criticized us before we step into court, or you know, our opponent's the most difficult opponent ever. Even if those are the things, we've still got to be able to manage ourselves. So technical skills, relationship skills, and presence are really the kind of, for me, the three things that are important.
Yeah, that's a really helpful model, and that particularly about knowing your internal state and how we show up. I think that's really helpful. James, you already alluded to your sort of leadership role within, say, chambers, and as a silk, you play a leadership role within in teams, in cases. How do we as professionals grow in our leadership skills and lead well?
That's a really good question, and I think it's a really interesting question for the bar, because there's something in the nature of leadership which is about giving to others. And of course, at the bar, we're all individual practitioners. So what does it mean? You know, what does it mean? And in another sense, kind of, why should we do it, right? So I haven't got a complete answer to that question, but I've got a kind of where I am at the moment with that question answer. And let me start at the junior end, because I think it's really, I think from my own personal experience, some of the strongest leadership I have seen and benefited from has been from very junior people. For example, I had an episode where I collapsed on a train during my kind of burnout episode, and I was with a junior, and I said to them, you know, what time are you meant to meet the client tomorrow? And they said, you know, 9:30. And I said, okay, well, can you just email them? So I'll be there at 10, because I think I should have a lie-in. And he said to me, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing? You should, you know, take some time off, get some help. There was a doctor who'd just seen me who said I needed to go to A&E and everything. Fortunately, I was fine in the end. But and that really gave me permission to just not need to be the perfect, immaculate, all-knowing, all-doing, all-capable silk, and just to be a regular guy who actually in that moment needed some help. And also to listen that there was another way that the you know, the conference next day could be taken care of, and I had cover, and that was okay to ask for help. And that was exactly what I needed at that time. And I always wonder to this day if that person, I always say his name when this comes up, Jack Connor, he's now a parliamentary draftsman. If Jack hadn't had the leadership to say that, what would I have done? You know, and I'd probably turned up the next day and struggled. Goodness knows. So there's something in the role of juniors in asking seniors, just like I said I do when I see more senior people to me, asking them for support. And there's something in that that gives permission to more senior people to kind of open up and share with juniors. So I think there's a huge amount of leadership from juniors, and also those people who sit just inside the threshold of the bar have a huge capacity for leadership in reaching out to people who want to cross that threshold. And that's the other thing I've seen, particularly in the young members of the profession now who are actively engaged in diversity and inclusion measures. That's an absolutely huge thing, which some of us at the senior end can do, but not everyone, because some of us don't fit or look or don't understand. We don't have the cross-generational reach, all sorts of things. And so there's a huge amount that the junior bar can do. And it's kind of, I guess I'm proud, I suppose, to look and see what's being done, and proud as a member of the profession to see that there are lots of young members of the bar doing that. So it's kind of headline one. Don't think that leadership is about seniority. It's a kind of distributive capacity. Anyone can do it, and we've all got opportunities, and we've all got a chance to think, what is it I can lead in, and how can I do it, right? For senior people, I guess for me it's about helping others. It's about sharing experience, and it's about sharing skills and good practice, by which I don't mean it's about showing people how I do it or how people tend to do it. I think it's incumbent upon us to learn and have the self-awareness to see how we can do things better. So when I say good practice, I do mean kind of objectively good practice. It's one of the problems with the kind of pupillage system, that it just relies on this kind of osmosis and observation. But people do things the way they've always tended to do them, which might be good in some circumstances, not so good in others. You might be lucky to have an exemplary practitioner. You might not. Levels of self-awareness at the bar, pretty moderate to low, I would have thought. So, how does feedback work, and how do discussions work about, I saw you do it this way. Why do you do it that way rather than that way? So I think it is incumbent upon senior members who want to teach and lead to have that awareness. I just started doing my train the trainers advocacy training, and I had to go first in the kind of mock thing, and I made a complete mess of it, because I suddenly realized I didn't have that much awareness of what the kind of objective measures of good advocacy at that kind of level were. And I've learned so much, still doing the training, I've learned so much from that. And the practitioners who were training us, who are retired or close to retirement benchers, really had a sense of what was going to help the person who was the student, who was being the dummy for the training, rather than what would they do. And it's having that sense of knowing how to reach out and help people at the level and stage that they're at, which I think is important. Although, having said that there are also those kind of aspirational leaders who are just so stellar and great that even though they feel untouchable, they're aspirational for us all as well. So I think there's a kaleidoscope of ways of doing things.
That's really helpful, James, bringing those different facets and together of leadership. In terms, we've talked perhaps throughout of stresses of practice and of personal life and managing those. What are some practical tools you can leave us with in terms of managing stress in a high performance profession, whether that's the bar, a solicitor, or in any other profession?
Yeah. So there are, when we experience or we see someone suffering what looks like stress, we don't know generally whether um, the stress is because they're feeling that they don't have the skills, and the lack of skill is causing the stress, in which case skills training is needed, or whether they are actually very skillful and competent, but there's some other trigger for the stress, which might be, the things we were talking about earlier, relationship dynamics or sense of self, or all of these other things. So there are different kind of entry levels in, and I think teaching people skills beyond technical skills, how to self-regulate, how to manage your relationships, those things we've talked about are important and essential. I want to just pitch the conversation at a really high level, if I might, and it's to talk about process. I think one of the problems we have in learning and understanding how to do things better, and it happens is in life generally, but at the bar especially, is we only see the outcomes. We never see the processes. You see someone standing on their feet, they cross-examine beautifully. You think, oh, I've got to be like that. Or you see a case beautifully prepared, or an opinion well written, or someone getting on well with a client, whatever it might be. That's great because it gives us a target, but it doesn't tell us anything about how to get to the target. It doesn't tell us how that person got to the target either. And I'm raising this because I'm really interested in creativity and creative processes. I was at a creativity workshop for a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of the learning there is not about the outcome; it's about the process. What processes can you engage to be more creative, with the expectation that there are other things which will mean that the outcome will be sufficient, or at least eventually sufficient. So let me bring it down into the something relevant to the bar. Let's imagine you're writing a closing or a skeleton argument. If you focus on the outcome, it can be really challenging to start. What are the magic keywords to start with? And it can be really challenging to make progress anyway, because there's a sense of the kind of perfection dial that's looking at every word. If you treat it as a process, I mean, one of the things I often say to clients who struggle with this is draft fast, edit slow. You can just splurge out on the paper, a bit like a potter putting some clay on the wheel, and then shape it. Now that's a different process to trying to get it right first time, but they both have a good chance of reaching the same outcome. In fact, they should reach the same outcome. It's just that one, for many people, that they're just writing something and then editing it, is easier if you can overcome the tendency, the self-editing, is easier to achieve and quicker to achieve than trying to make it perfect in one go. And that's just one example. One thing I do quite a lot in decision making in cons. I often won't know the answer to questions when I go into a con, kind of why. If I did, what's the point in having a meeting, kind of thing? And because you learn, right, that other people have their insights and you can make an answer. And so the work becomes a process. What are the questions we've got to ask? Let's gather in the information for that. Now we've got those answers. Where does that lead us? All the things like that. That's, again, a process. When I write, I'm asked to advise. If I can, I will send the advice out in draft. Again, to help my process, because I don't want to, there's a chance that other people may disagree, and I want to hear that before I sign it off. There's a chance I might have made a mistake on something, like I've got the facts wrong or a date wrong. So I want to hear about that before I sign it off. And there's a chance that I might have misunderstood what I'm being asked, and I want to make sure the client's getting the answers to the real questions, and so on. And again, that's a process that's aimed at delivering quality, but it also relieves me of the constant self-questioning of, oh, is this really what they want? Oh, do I need to check that fact for the 15th time to make sure I've got it right? All the rest of that. So I think if anyone suffers from a kind of recurrent stress or recurrent pattern in their practice, which is they feel there's something wrong, I would say look at your process. Look at your case preparation process. I was speaking to someone the other day, and their case preparation process was literally to like have the funnel, that wide, and just read everything and try and absorb all the facts and then bring it down. And I said, well, what about working at it the other way? What about just thinking, what's the key thread of the story that I want to tell? What are the kind of key building blocks? Now, if I read more widely, what's the information that's going to help me? I mean, it's just to reversing the funnel, if you like. And these are different ways of achieving the same outcomes that are sometimes kinder or easier. So process is one, and that applies, I think, across the board. I think when it comes to ourselves, I think the first step is raising awareness, raising our own awareness of what we're going through. I mean, recently I've been feeling a little bit under the weather, pressure-wise, and I realised I'd let go of some of my good habits. I was going to yoga regularly, but I'd stopped. I've been going to the gym regularly, but I kind of dropped off that, and just over a course of 2 or 3 weeks, but I could feel like something wasn't right, and so I took a weekend to kind of reset myself, and back on track again now. So having that awareness, I think, is really important, but that requires us to keep track of ourselves in an honest way. Practices like journaling and self-reflection. The BSB professional statement says that we should develop a reflective practice. So these are things that are expected of us. So raising our awareness is important, and then learning the tools to do things differently if we need to. And I think it sounds a bit boring, but habits are so important. Because a lot of people who are faced with a choice between, okay, this way for me is not working, this way could, fall down just because they don't stick at it for long enough. And you got to there's that kind of, we all like to think there's a magic wand and suddenly we'll be self-aligned and self-empowered and we'll go off and do things a different way. And actually the change requires us to do the work of just getting used to doing things differently. And then once the benefits start to seep back in, it becomes we become convinced of the sense of it. We keep doing it. So awareness and learning new tools and new ways of doing things.
James, that's really helpful, that sort of process awareness and then developing the habits. Yeah, that's really helpful for people. I know your organization is the Libra Partnership, where you deliver coaching, therapy, training. Just if people would like to work with you, what sort of services do you offer? What's the best way for people to reach out to you? I'll put contact details, of course, in the description for this video. But if people would like, after hearing this, to work with you, what do you offer?
Yeah. Okay. So quick summary. We do one-on-one things and group things. And group things we sometimes do at the inns, or I host things in chambers, or we can do them in-house, so in your own chambers. The one-on-one stuff is coaching. So it will be the basic process is identifying what people's objectives are, where they are now, how we're going to measure them, and then setting up a program to make progress. And one of the things that I'm particularly interested in and trained in is kind of bridging the gap between people's personal dynamics and their professional performance. What are the kind of internal things that are going on that might be holding people back, or helping people in some cases that need to be kind of expanded. And those will be one-on-one sessions of mostly an hour, sometimes a bit longer, over a course of weeks or months, really to get people back on track. And that it really kind of touches my heart when people come because they're struggling and they thinking, I can't do this, or I don't know where to turn, because the bar is full of so much talent. It's full of so much talent, and it's heartbreaking when really talented people feel that they're not up to the job. and it's not because they're not up to the job. It's just because they've got a few things that they need to learn and straighten out, and so yeah. So that's the one-on-one stuff, and then workshops. We tend to focus on themes like communication skills, relationship skills, self-resourcing, things like that. And I'm at Middle, so I kind of run a series of, we set them up about a year ago, and a series of workshops in their Survive and Thrive series, which, by the way, if you're not a Middle member, if you email Middle, they'll often hold some places for non-Middle people, and they're run for free, kind of 3-hour, 4-hour workshops. And that's one of the great things about those is, you know, there might be people listening who think, oh, you know, I don't know if I could kind of go along to a workshop with other barristers and kind of share some of my challenges or so on. Don't believe it for a minute, because you get 15 people there, and don't forget it's a kind of self-selecting group. So the people who want to be there are people who are there, are people who want to be there, and the amount of self and mutual care and support and teaching that goes on through people in the group of different seniorities is absolutely phenomenal. And there's a huge missed resource that at the bar, because people don't get together enough in the right kinds of settings to share things. So these workshops are going well. We have a program and a framework, and we teach specific tools, but there's a lot of mutual teaching and help that goes on. And then I also, about 4 or 5 times a year, run more kind of what might be thought of as more kind of therapeutic workshops for people having personal struggles, family struggles, relationship issues, people who've had traumatic childhood, things like that. And I'm pleased to say you get a few barristers and lawyers coming to those, often though the people are general members of the public or therapists actually themselves, either wanting to know how to help clients or have issues themselves. And I do that, one, because I really enjoy it, and it's rewarding for me, but also it just gives me some deeper insights into that can help me with the one-on-one work and with the training work, because, you know, we never know when someone needs support exactly what's in their biography, and it's good just to have a sense of what care people might need and what support people might need. So people can direct message me or look on our website. It's www.thelibrapartnership.com. Look at the Middle Temple website, LinkedIn, you know, the usual places. And I'm always happy to people to reach out and just have chats, and we do a kind of free, you know, 20-30 minute conversation just to see what people want and if it's suitable for them and things like that.
That's really helpful, James, and I'd encourage people who've listened along and got to this stage to reach out to you, because I think there's so much there. And one of the themes that has come across throughout all of your answers is about developing this awareness and developing, having the tools to be aware of our state. So that's so helpful.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I was in trouble, I didn't know where to look, and it was and I can still remember how hard it was reaching out for help. And I guess, you know, I don't want other people to be that way if they don't have to be. And look, there are lots of other people providing support now, and the Inns do, and the Bar Council does as well. So please, if anyone needs support, find a place to reach out and get it. And it's for the better. You'll benefit from it. Clients will benefit from it, and you'll have a sustainable practice that you can carry on enjoying.
No, thank you so much, James. Thank you again for joining me today. There's been so much that's been useful and helpful to people in your own journey, and just sharing wisdom with us. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.